What if the galaxy gave up on you? What if every ally vanished, every hope burned away until only silence remained? Now, imagine that silence breaks. From the edge of space they arrive, black ships, bending reality, bearing the mark of a forgotten world. Humanity, absent for decades, feared for reasons no one dares to speak. But today, they return, not for conquest, for justice, for a debt long unpaid. This isn't just survival. This is the reckoning. And the galaxy will never be the same. Stay till the end, because the truth, it's bigger than war. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. The sky above Narelle was no longer blue. It had turned into a swirling storm of ash and smoke, lit by the distant flashes of weapons fire. Inside the last functioning command center of the Serenian capital, Commander Leoran Vel stood with his hands clenched behind his back. His golden eyes stared out through a cracked window as a silent dread settled over the room. The Karnak swarm, ruthless and unstoppable, had already destroyed most of their cities. Now they were circling in for the final blow. Everything was failing. Their shield grid flickered every few minutes and power reserves were nearly gone. Reports came in quietly, but steadily. Communications lost with the southern outposts, refugee, ships not making it past the upper atmosphere, and ground defenses being crushed like twigs. Everyone inside the room felt it, though no one spoke the words aloud. The Serenians were about to fall, and this time, no one was coming to help. Advisor. Dara, always the most logical voice among the officers, stood beside Leoran. Her pale skin shimmered faintly with stress, a biological trait of her kind. Commander, she said in a low tone, we've gone through every option. We've called on our allies in the Ascarian Assembly, sent alerts to the trade guilds, even reached out to the rogue systems. There is no response. No one wants to challenge the Karnaks. Leoran turned to her slowly. There is one more option, he said, his voice heavy with reluctance. Dara stiffened. You don't mean Earth? The name brought silence across the room. Even the young technician at the communication station froze mid-keystroke. Earth. A world wrapped in mystery, wrapped in silence. For over 20 years, humanity had cut itself off from the rest of the galaxy after the infamous Aurelian crisis. No trade, no diplomacy, no aid. They had simply vanished, closing their gates and taking their unpredictable technology with them. Some said they'd been broken. Others said they were hiding something far more dangerous. They owe us nothing, Dara reminded him gently. They haven't responded to a single distress call since they withdrew. If they hear us, they might ignore us, or worse, they might remember the war. Leoran nodded slowly. They might, he said. But there's a chance they remember something else. Long ago, when humanity was reeling from the plague that nearly wiped out their species, it was Serenian scientists who crossed borders and protocols to help them. They had provided genetic tools to help rebuild Earth's fragile ecosystem, even while the rest of the galaxy had looked away. Leoran's own mother had served on that mission, and though he was just a child then, he remembered the stories of humans, frightened but determined, brilliant and wild. A species always underestimated, until it was too late. He walked across the room to the old transmission terminal. It hadn't been used in years. Dust coated its surface, and parts of the display flickered uncertainly. But the signal still worked. The last channel reserved for an ancient treaty, one signed long before Earth closed its borders. Article 9 of the Alliance Accord, mutual defense in the event of extinction-level threat. I'll send the signal, Leoran said. One last time. As his fingers moved across the controls, the officers watched in silence. He recorded a simple message, his voice calm but urgent, his words stripped of pride. He spoke not as a commander demanding help, but as someone remembering a bond long buried. When the message ended, he encoded it on the old emergency frequency, a channel no one had used in 2 decades. But deep in the vaults of the Serenian database, They had records that suggested Earth still monitored it, just in case. He pressed the final button. The signal launched into space, and then all they could do was wait. Outside, the hum of the command center was broken by the low tremble of another Carnex bombardment. The ground shook. A few panels dropped from the ceiling. Red lights began to flash on the main console, critical systems falling offline, shield energy below 10%, structural integrity compromised. But Leoran remained steady. "They won't come," Dara said softly, her voice filled with a quiet sadness. "Earth has moved on." "Maybe," Leoran replied, his eyes still on the now blank screen. "Or maybe they're just waiting for the right reason to return." As the tremors grew louder, another technician suddenly shouted, "Incoming ships at the edge of the system. Wait, the signature doesn't match Carnex or any Concord vessel." Leoran's heart skipped a beat. "Human? It's unknown." But the energy readings, they're off the charts. Outside, far beyond the broken atmosphere of Narelle, space began to ripple. Not the usual warp trails. These were different. Like space itself was being torn open and stitched together by hands that no longer played by the rules of physics. From the tiers came ships, black as night, angular, silent. They didn't arrive with sound or flashing lights. They simply were, and they were coming fast. Leoran took a step forward, his breath caught in his chest. They heard us. No one in the room spoke. They had lit a beacon in the dark, and humanity, long silent, had answered. Deep beneath the waves of Earth's southern ocean, inside a massive structure hidden from satellites and probes, Captain Mireia Sol stood still. Her hands were behind her back, her face unreadable as she watched a flickering transmission replay across the command room's main screen. The image was grainy and full of static, but the message was clear. A call for help, a voice full of desperation. The Serenians were dying and they were calling out to Earth, the one place that hadn't answered a distress signal in over 20 years. Around her, her crew moved with quiet precision, the sound of their boots echoing softly in the vast metallic chamber. They were all trained for this, waiting for this. Because while the galaxy thought Earth had vanished into isolation, the truth was much more complicated. Earth hadn't disappeared. It had hidden. On purpose. Mireia listened to the message again. The voice of the Serenian commander, Leoran Vel, was heavy with sorrow. He didn't beg. He didn't threaten. He simply asked. A call made not to governments, but to memory. Her memory. "I knew his mother," she said aloud, breaking the silence. A few officers turned toward her, surprised. She was one of the scientists who came during the plague. "My father never forgot her." She paused, her fingers tightening slightly. "We owe them." Earth's isolation hadn't been because of weakness. It had been survival. After the plague, Earth had been broken. The galactic powers had offered help, but at a cost. Control. When Earth refused to be owned, it was cut off, labeled reckless and dangerous. The Aurelian crisis was just the excuse they needed. After that, Earth had sealed its borders and disappeared. But they didn't stop building. Inside the oceans, under the deserts, and across the icy moons of the outer system, Earth's brightest minds built something new, technology that broke rules, ideas that no longer waited for permission. And most of all, they built ships. Not for war, for survival. Ships that could travel in silence, strike like ghosts, and vanish before anyone knew they were there. The Sentinel Fleet, and Mireia Sol was its commander. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Bran Cole, approached quietly. "Captain, the fleet is ready. All systems checked and standing by for departure." She nodded but didn't turn to face him. "And the Concord? Any movement?" "Nothing yet. But if we launch, they'll see it. The old surveillance stations may be cold, but they're still out there." Mireia smiled slightly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Let them see. Maybe it's time they remembered why Earth walked away." She turned and strode toward the central command chair, her long coat trailing behind her. "Prepare a precision jump to the neural system. Use blackout routing. We enter on the edge of their starfield minimum exposure. Aye, Captain. As the alarms began to hum with energy, the ships of the Sentinel fleet powered up around them. These weren't the sleek cruisers of the galactic powers. They were different. Larger, quieter, shaped like shadows, and designed to operate alone. Each one had its own AI, its own learning system, and its own silent threat. They didn't fly with honor banners. They flew to keep promises. Mireia stood at the helm of her flagship, the Vigilant Star, as the countdown to launch began. Around E, her engineers moved with quiet focus. Every part of this had been rehearsed for years, but this time, it was real. They were breaking Earth's silence. 10 seconds to jump. She thought of Leoran's message again, of that quiet plea sent into the void. He hadn't just called for help. He had reminded her of a bond once forgotten but not broken. That mattered. 5 seconds to jump. She breathed in. Her voice was calm as she gave the final command. Initiate jump. Let's go bring the light back. Space outside twisted and bent. The air on the ship buzzed with unseen energy. And then, with a soft hum and no fireworks, the entire fleet disappeared from Earth's sky. Out in the void, far from the safety of home, rips in space opened like quiet cracks in glass. One by one, the ships of Earth emerged from nothing, silently sliding into the edge of Nirel's system. The stars flickered above them. No alarms, no greetings, just the silence of a universe watching. From the deck of the Vigilant Star, Mireia watched as her systems mapped the incoming data. The Serenian defenses were falling. The Karnex fleet was tightening the noose. They had minutes, maybe less. Her voice rang out. Send the signal, tell them we're here. Back on Nirel, Commander Lioran stared at the skies in disbelief as strange ships appeared. Shapes that bent the air around them. Machines that didn't glide or warp but seemed to fold reality itself. No banners, no transmissions. Until finally, a message came through. This is Captain Mireia Sol of Earth Sentinel Fleet. Apologies for the delay. Let's begin. And for the first time in years, Earth spoke to the galaxy again. The skies above Nirel were burning. Fires from orbit rained down in endless streaks, painting the upper atmosphere in waves of orange and red. Cities crumbled. Mountains shook. The final shield grid was flickering like a candle in the wind, ready to go out at any moment. Commander Leoran Vel stood at the center of his failing command station, surrounded by smoke, sparks, and the sounds of distant explosions. Everyone around him moved like they were dreaming. Faces pale, hands trembling, eyes fixed on displays. That showed only bad news. It felt like the end. Then the screens changed. It happened all at once. New signals appeared on the system's edge. Not Karnex, not Conquered, something else. Energy readings they'd never seen before. Silent, sharp, focused. They came not through the usual warp paths, but through tears in space itself, jagged cracks that opened like wounds in the stars. From those tears, Earth's ships emerged. There was no grand announcement, no banners or signals, they simply appeared. Dark ships, shaped more like shadows than machines. They absorbed light rather than reflected it. No one could tell how fast they were moving or how large they truly were, because the very space around them bent unnaturally. The lead vessel was so black it looked like a hole in the sky, and from its center came a quiet voice. This is Captain Mireia Sol of Earth's Sentinel Fleet. Nirel, we are here. Leoran leaned forward, hardly breathing. Around him, his officers were silent, frozen by disbelief. Earth had answered, not just with a message, but with force. Their force. Outside, the Karnex noticed the arrival too. Their swarm ships, crude and fast, broke formation. More missiles launched, thousands of them. Streams of plasma fire followed. They didn't wait to ask questions. They attacked, but the human fleet did not move. The missiles struck first and vanished. No impact, no explosion. It was as if the attacks had been swallowed by space itself. The Serenian screens went wild, trying to make sense of what had happened. Liran's science officer whispered. It's like their shields erase matter. Then came Earth's reply. From the human vessels, weapons that didn't resemble anything the Serenians had ever seen burst to life. Some beams were pure white, but didn't shine. They sliced across space like threads of nothingness. Wherever they touched a Karnak ship, that piece was simply gone. No wreckage, no debris. Others launched small projectiles that multiplied in mid-flight, each darting like a hunter with a mind of its own. Entire squadrons of Karnak ships exploded before even realizing they were under attack. The battle shifted in seconds. Liran watched, stunned, as the Karnaks began to falter. Their formations broke. Their commanders tried to regroup, but it was useless. Earth's fleet wasn't just strong, it was precise. Every movement was part of a larger design, like a silent orchestra playing a song of destruction. Then the transmission came again. Commander Vel, Mireya's voice said, calm but direct. We are deploying evacuation teams to your shelters. Please inform your people not to resist. Our suits may look unfamiliar, but we mean no harm. Liran swallowed hard and nodded. Understood, Captain. You have command authorization. He gave the order, and a young technician relayed it across the battered Serenian network. Civilian shelters opened. Human dropships descended like falling stars, landing with a quiet grace that defied gravity. They weren't just evacuating, they were healing. Medics in sleek suits moved fast, stabilizing the wounded with tools that worked faster than Serenian science could even explain. Back in the command center, Liran's voice trembled slightly as he asked the question everyone was thinking. Captain Sol, after all these years, why now? There was a pause. Then Mireya replied, her voice softer than before. Because once, your people saved us, when no one else would. And because the Karnaks aren't just acting on their own, we've seen the signs for months. They were given help, technology they shouldn't have. Liran blinked. By whom? Mireya answered without hesitation. The Interstellar conquered. They used the Karnaks to do what they couldn't do openly, wipe out your archives, destroy your biological vaults, erase the help you once gave us, and the knowledge that could help others do the same. It took a moment for the truth to sink in. The Karnaks hadn't attacked just to conquer. They'd come to erase a legacy. Liran's jaw tightened. And now? Now, Mireya said, as the last Karnak's warship exploded on the screen. They'll realize they've made a mistake. Outside, the sky above Narelle began to clear. Fires still burned, but the bombing had stopped. The swarm was gone. The humans had not just arrived, they had turned the tide in minutes, and across the command center for the first time in what felt like years, there was silence. Not from fear, but from awe. Earth was back. And this time, they had come with purpose. The battle was over, but the stars had not yet returned to peace. High above Narelle, the last of the Karnak ships drifted in silence, torn open and lifeless. The black ships of Earth hovered in calm formation, unmoving and unreadable, like silent judges watching the sky. In the command center below, Commander Liran Vel stood among his crew, who stared at the view screens in stunned silence. For the first time in weeks, there were no alarms, no countdowns, and no screams echoing through the halls. The only sound was the soft hum of restored power. Hope had returned, but with it came questions no one dared to voice. A new signal came through the system. It wasn't from the Karnaks. It was from farther out, cold, sharp, and familiar in a dangerous way. The Interstellar Concord had arrived. 3 vessels entered the system, each larger than the last. Their silver hulls gleamed with polished pride, and their weapons hummed with energy. These were not scout ships or patrols. These were oversight dreadnoughts, vessels built to remind the galaxy who held power. Their very presence was a threat. Inside the Narelle command center, the lights dimmed slightly as the sensors struggled to read their massive energy output. Captain Mireya Sol stood at the center of her flagship, the Vigilant Star, calm and unshaken. She had been waiting for this moment. As the Concord's lead ship approached, a message lit up across her screen. She gave a simple nod. Open the channel. The face that appeared was tall and stern, belonging to a conquered overseer named Aurel. Fian. His expression was cold, his tone sharper than any weapon. Human vessel, you are in violation of Council Directive 5912. You have entered a protected zone, engaged in unauthorized military action, and interfered with classified operations. Stand down immediately, or face the consequences. Mireia didn't flinch. Her voice was steady. Overseer Fian, your ships carry weapons designed to intimidate and silence. But I suggest you listen first. Fian leaned forward. There is nothing you can say that will justify this trespass. We've uncovered the truth, Mireia replied. The Karneks were not acting alone. Your council provided them with the targeting data and weapons needed to destroy Narel's legacy, technology once shared with Earth during the plague. We have the data from their command ship, and we've already sent it to every major species in the galaxy. Fine's expression faltered for just a moment before returning to ice. That information is restricted. Not anymore, Mireia said. Before the overseer could reply, she gave a small hand signal. All around her, satellites hidden in the void powered up. The reflection protocol activated. Invisible beams spread out, scanning the conquered dreadnoughts at a quantum level, mapping their weapon systems in real time. On the conquered bridge, warning lights flared. Confusion spread across their crew as their systems began echoing back at them. Fian's voice was tight with panic now. What have you done? We call it balance, Mireia said calmly. Any weapon you use against us will now be copied, matched, and returned with equal force. You've ruled through fear and control for too long. That ends today. The conquered ships hesitated. Their power was based on secrecy and superiority. Without it, they were just another player in a much larger game. And now, the game had changed. Leoran watched it all unfold from his command center. For years, the Serenians had depended on old alliances and fragile promises. Now, they stood, witness to something new. Humanity not as outcasts, but as defenders. Not as a hidden power, but as a rising force for change. As the Concord ship slowly retreated, a message came through from Mireia. Commander Vel, the last of your civilians are safely aboard. Our teams are securing the genetic vaults now. Once complete, we'll escort you to the Proxima system. You'll be safe there while you rebuild. Leoran's voice was low with emotion. Captain, how can we ever repay this? You already have, she said. Long ago, your people helped save ours, and we haven't forgotten. He paused, then added, You've done more than save us, you've changed the galaxy. She smiled for the first time. That was the idea. As the ships left orbit, new stars appeared on the screen, other vessels from far-off systems answering the call Earth had sent out. They carried different flags, different voices, but one message. The galaxy no longer belonged to the powerful, alone. It now belonged to those brave enough to speak, to fight, and to stand for something greater. In the silence that followed, Captain Mireia Sol stood once more at the edge of a beginning. Earth's long night was over, and its light, long hidden, was finally ready to shine.